YouTube, it's Zoe, and yesterday I was perusing my channel, as you do, when I realized it is the end of March 2018 and I still haven't shared all of my favorite books from 2017. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to finally catch up with the rest of the world. Better late than never, I guess. Now, 2017 wasn't a great year in many respects, but it was a pretty darn good reading year for me. I read a grand total of 65 books, so today I'm going to share my top 10 favorites. But before we start, it also turns out I never shared my favorite books of 2016. Why am I so forgetful? What was I doing at the beginning of 2017 and the beginning of this year? We will never know. Anyway, let's go through my favorite books of 2016 very quickly. I told you it'd be quick. Now onto what you actually came here to see, the best books of 2017. And before you comment, not all of these books came out in 2017, but I read them all in 2017. You get it. Alrighty then, let's start. Starting with number 10, I loved The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. I also read Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli in 2017 and really enjoyed it, especially the movie adaptation Love, Simon that just came out. Oh my goodness, so good! But I slightly prefer this book to that one simply because I relate to it far more. This is a young adult contemporary novel which follows Molly, a 17-year-old who has had 26 crushes in her life but has never done anything about them because she is afraid of rejection. Relatable, but throughout this novel she gains confidence and is finally able to put herself out there. I love the diverse cast of characters, something that Becky Albertalli puts in all of her novels and which is so necessary because it reflects what our world is actually like. Molly is fat and has anxiety. Her twin sister, and her little brother are all sperm donor babies and were raised by two moms, one of which is black. They were raised Jewish and her twin sister is a lesbian. There is so much representation and it's wonderful to see. This is a lighthearted rom-com, so at the end of a long, stressful day, it was such a pleasure to sit down with the book and a cup of coffee and snuggle up and be welcomed into this family, focusing on their drama instead of my own. Number 9 is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, a historical fiction slash adventure slash romance novel set in the 1700s and following a British lord's bisexual son, Monty. Monty is reckless and hedonistic, something his father disapproves of because he is the heir, so he sets off on one last wild escapade across Europe before he begins his boring, rule-following life as a lord. He is accompanied by his younger sister and his best friend Percy, who he is in love with, and they encounter far more adventure and danger than they were expecting. This is a fast-paced book with quick wit and high stakes, so I was on the edge of my seat for pretty much the entirety of the last half, but not just that. Yes, the adventure is pretty great, but the romance, it made my heart swell, I was gushing, but it also made my heart break. I was crying. Pretty much every emotion was experienced by me in 500 pages. Also, although this is set in the 1700s, the characters feel so modern. They push against the expectations and norms of the time. We have Monty, who is bisexual, Felicity, his sister, who wants to pursue a career that is limited to men at that time, and Percy, who is black, and also the cutest character ever. The novel directly confronts the issues that would have arisen for these characters during this time period, which was so refreshing to see in historical fiction. Number 8 on my favorites list is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia, a contemporary novel which follows a high school senior, Eliza, who suffers from severe anxiety, which has resulted in her having no friends at school. However, she is able to be herself online, where she is the anonymous creator of a wildly popular webcomic which has millions and millions of fans. One day, one of these fans, the most popular of these fans, he is famous for his fan fiction of her webcomic, transfers to her school, and they become friends. She knows that he is the fan fiction writer, but he does not know that she is the creator of the webcomic. So problems arise. At first it seems like this is just a lighthearted romance which focuses on geeky fangirling and awkward first love, which, don't get me wrong, I love all of these things, but this novel gets so much deeper than that. It deals with anxiety, suicide, and the complex relationship between a creator and their creation, and as an online creator who has anxiety, this really resonated with me. I saw so much of myself in this novel, things that I've never seen written down before, so this is near and dear to my heart. This is an amazing portrayal of anxiety and is a truly original plot in a genre, YA contemporary, where plots are often recycled. Number 7 is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, a cheeky fantasy novel very much like Harry Potter, which follows a chosen one, Simon Snow, who goes to a British wizarding school and is the only one who can defeat the big bad villain. However, what's different is that Simon is having quite complicated, possibly romantic feelings about his vampire roommate and sworn arch nemesis, Baz. It's a fantasy, it's an adventure, it's a ghost story, it's a mystery, it's a romance, it's all of that rolled up into one, plus it's wacky and hilarious and has great LGBT representation. Basically, it's a delight and a half. Also, a fun thing is that in one of Rainbow Rowell's other novels, Fangirl, which is another one of my favorites, the main character writes fan fiction based on one of her favorite series, which is basically Harry Potter, and she calls it Carry On. This is not the exact same fan fiction, but it's Rainbow Rowell's own interpretation of that story, and it has the same name. Kind of confusing, I know. Next, number 6 is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I have an interesting history with this book because I grew up watching the 1980s adaptation, and I really enjoyed the adaptation, but I never felt the urge to actually pick up the book. And then, in freshman year of college, I wrote an entire 10-page research paper on this book without ever actually reading the book. I read Spark Notes. Please don't tell my teacher, I beg you. Last year though, I finally did my homework, I read the book, and I loved it! This is a children's classic written in 1908, and it takes place in Prince Edward Island, Canada, following a young orphan, Anne, who is adopted by the elderly Cuthbert siblings to help around the family farm. Anne is one of the most iconic characters in all of literature, and for good reason. She is imaginative, smart, free-spirited and loving, but she is also stubborn and vain and somewhat obnoxious. The whole book is so cozy and atmospheric. Reading it is like wrapping yourself up in a fuzzy blanket and taking a sip of warm tea. I immediately want to reread this book and then read the rest of the series. I'm not sure though that my heart can handle watching this precocious little girl grow up into a mature woman with a family. Am I strong enough? Also, traveling to Prince Edward Island is now definitely on my bucket list. I need to travel to that magical little island at least once in my life. It is going to happen. Number 5 on my favorites list is Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty, and I just realized that this is the only non-young adult book on this list. Whoops! This focuses on the complex and emotional lives of 3 Australian mothers who meet because they all have kids in the same kindergarten class. We also learn at the beginning of the novel that someone has been killed. We don't know who died, we don't know how they died, and we don't know who killed them. Throughout the novel, it seems like every single character could have been the murderer or the murdered. Even the kids! Everybody has a secret. It is so dang gripping. I can't tell you much more because it is a mystery, so half the satisfaction of reading it is learning about the characters and watching the events unfold. I don't want to take any of that satisfaction away from you. But this, along with the HBO adaptation with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, was superb. Coming in at number 4 is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Everybody has read this. years and years ago, but if you couldn't tell by the fact that this very video you're watching is late, I am always behind. This tells the story of a young girl named Liesel who lives in Germany during World War II and steals books, the only thing that can bring her comfort during this horrific time. What sets this novel apart, though, is the fact that this is narrated by Death. What? Yeah! He speaks in a descriptive and detached manner as Death is neither good nor evil, which somehow makes this novel so much more emotional than it already would have been. I full-on sobbed during the last 100 pages or so, and I love books that can elicit that much emotion from me. Also, I read this during a 24-hour readathon, so I flew through this book in just a couple of hours. I really want to reread it though, so that I can savor the beautifully descriptive prose, though, knowing me, I'll probably just fly through it in a couple of hours again. It is so captivating. Number 3, which was actually the last book I read in 2017, so I definitely ended the year on a high note. It was The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This is about a black 16-year-old Star who witnesses her childhood best friend Khalil shot and killed by a police officer and all of the repercussions of that tragedy. Star also moves between two worlds, the poor and predominantly black neighborhood where she lives and the rich and predominantly white prep school that she attends. After Khalil's death, she sees how each world responds to the news and reevaluates where her loyalties lie. This story feels so incredibly real, not only because it is inspired by real events and the Black Lives Matter movement, but because every single character, every line of dialogue, and every event feels like something you would see, hear, or experience in real life. The characters, especially Star and her family, were so fleshed out and I loved every single one of them, especially the parents, which I was not expecting because in young adult literature, parents tend to either be dead, mysteriously absent, or just plain terrible. This is a necessary book for our current social and political climate. I think that every single person, no matter age, race, gender, whatever, should read this, as it may open their minds to the injustices that are occurring and may help them reevaluate their past actions as it did for me. It is important and moving, and at the end of the day, this is just a gosh darn well-written book. Number 2 on this list is The Raven Boys, the first book in the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. This is an urban fantasy / paranormal book which takes place in a small Virginian town and follows a girl, Blue, whose mother, aunts, and mother's friends are all psychics and they all live in one house. Blue herself is not a psychic. Her only gift is to amplify the powers of others. She's also been told her entire life that she will cause her true love to die. This also follows a small group of private school boys, including Gansey, Ronan, Adam, and Noah, who are all searching for a long-lost dead Welsh king named Glendower because the legend says whoever wakes him up will be granted a favor. Blue teams up with these boys, and the rest is history. This is an incredibly atmospheric book. It has a certain feeling to it that no other book can replicate, a little bit dreamy with just a few hints of magic, so it seems like this could really take place in a real world, that you could just hop in your car and drive to Henrietta, Virginia if you wanted to. Every character is so distinct from one another. They all have such strong personalities that should clash, and sometimes they do, but mostly they just fit together like a puzzle. Though this is a paranormal book and it does seem to have such a crazy plot, this is mostly a character-driven book, and you couldn't ask for a more compelling cast of characters. I actually just reread this book and finished the rest of the series this month. I read all 4 books in 24 hours and I absolutely loved them, so I'm pretty sure they're going to show up on my favorite books of 2018 video, if I ever remember to film that one. And finally, number 1, my favorite book of the entire year is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I wasn't actually planning on ever reading this book. In high school, I was a massive fan of John Green, especially The Fault in Our Stars, but since then, my reading tastes have obviously changed and I'm not as big a fan of his past works. So when I heard he had a new book coming out, I was just like, whatever. But thank goodness several of my friends weren't as apathetic as I was. They immediately picked up the book, read it, and then recommended it to me, and then I hesitantly picked it up and I fell in love. This made me a believer in John Green once more. So this tells the story of a 16-year-old Asa who, along with her best friend, try to find a missing billionaire to collect the $100,000 reward. And this investigation leads her to reconnect with the billionaire's son. However, the real story is Asa's struggle with her OCD and the intrusive thoughts that come with it. It is one of the most honest portrayals of mental illness I have ever read, which makes sense because John Green has stated that he too struggles with OCD. It is not romanticized in the least. It shows the real silent struggle that many people with mental illness go through every single day. And more broadly, how everybody is struggling with something. People are complex creatures. Although this wasn't the best piece of literature that I read in 2017, it was my favorite because it really spoke to me. I was not in the greatest point in my life mental health wise when I read this, so I related hardcore to Asa's struggles, and John Green predictably filled this with so many powerful quotes that I felt exposed. After I finished this at like 2 a.m., I immediately FaceTimed my friend Hannah while I was on the floor of my bathroom trying really hard to be quiet because my roommate's mom was out in the living room sleeping, as I was full on sobbing, snot, and near hyperventilation and all. We spent a good hour going through every single quote that meant something to us in the book, which basically meant rereading the book aloud together. It's amazing to see the power that certain words read at a certain time can have. This book has secured itself to my soul. That sounds so overdramatic and cheesy, I'm sorry, but that's the best way to describe it. I even wrote an entire research paper on this book and I'm still not sick of it. So that's when you know it's good. Okay, everybody, those were my favorite books of both 2016 and 2017. I finally remember to share them all with you. If you remembered what you read in 2016 and 2017, I know it's been a while, please let me know down below what was the best book you read in both years, and if you read any of the books that I have mentioned today, what did you think about them? Did you like them too? I hope so. Thank you all so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you all soon in my next one. Bye!